Sounds great.
And next, I'll go ahead and share my screen. Oops. So just want to confirm that you guys can see that all right?
Yeah, you can see it there. Good.
All right. Perfect. Yeah, again, I apologize for hopping in here late, so I'll go through this relatively quickly, but obviously, feel free to stop me with any questions whatsoever. It shouldn't really take us too long to get through it here, though. This is the homepage. So, when you log into the NAT platform, this is what it looks like here for you. I just like showing this page real quickly just to show, we have a common questions and trading catalog tab, as well as the help desk number and email there in the top right. So always have resources and tools there for any assistance for you. But obviously, we'll start a new deal. So you just click on this button, start a new deal. And then the first thing that'll pop up here is the just an image of the map here, the map of the US, and you're just going to select your customer state, obviously, that they're going to be titling or registering into. I just refer to this as kind of like the introduction page. This page is really going to tailor, the rest of the deal, the rest of the system based on whatever we select on this page, mainly being the state. But even if we select our purchase type and other things down here that are going to, affect the rest of the system as well. But first off, selecting the state here, I can't remember, Duncan, if you told me yesterday if there was a specific state you were wanting to set the demo or, anything.
Yeah, let's do Utah to begin with.
Utah, gotcha. Utah. I actually don't think I've ever done a demonstration on Utah, to be honest with you. So I'm a little curious myself of what things that they'll have, such as, taxes and fees and whatnot. But yeah, you select your customer state and then you select your dealership up in the top left here. Once you're a customer of ours in the system, you just look up your dealership and it'll pop up there for you. Transaction type, it has a drop down, but obviously it's just title registration is the only option there actually. Then deal number. So this is where the DMS integration would come into play. I'm not sure if we really discussed that much on Monday, Duncan, but essentially we integrate with majority of the DMS providers. So that just means that the customer information that's already in the DMS system, DMS, a dealer management system, will just pull right over here into Title Tech, right? So just be one less thing you got to manually input, makes it even just that much more efficient for you. Isn't really something that's all too necessary, but that's where that would come into play here. Obviously on the demo, I'm not going to have any there, so it's going to say not found. But I just always like to, show that if that is something a dealership wants to utilize, it's certainly a good tool if they're doing a lot of out-of-state deals and, want to get through it just a little more efficiently and a little quicker than without it. After that, you'd put in the VIN number of the vehicle here. I just load the vehicle here and you'll see it'll automatically put in the vehicle type. Then we're just going to select the purchase type. This is just a 2020 Tahoe, I believe it is, one that I just utilize all the time there. So that's why it auto-populates like that. But once you put in the VIN, it's going to give you the vehicle type already, and then you just select the purchase type. So I like to do a finance deal on the demonstrations just to show the lien holder side of things as well. A cash deal would obviously be more or less the same thing, just the finance deal would be with in addition to lien holder information. So I always like to do that as well. And then lastly, you're just selecting whether or not you're going to be doing a plate transfer. And that's not going to be, quite literally doing the plate transfer electronically, but it is just for the sake of fees. So most people typically tell me no. Is that something that you believe, your dealerships, your customers would be doing as well? Would they be doing plate transfers or not?
What do you think, Jay?
For the plate transfers, does that mean that they may retain a plate from a previous vehicle? Or is it just that they're getting the plate issued as part of the transaction?
Yeah, the plate issued as part of the transaction.
Yeah, that would probably be happening as well.
Okay. I gotcha. And again, it's just really for the sake of fees in this case, but that's just something you would select every deal as well. But that's really going to make up what is the first part or the introduction page here. So the first portion of the deal, which really, like I said, kind of sets up the deal and tailors it to whatever information you put on this page. So we'll be going ahead and hitting full deal. You do have the option to do a fee calculation only. It's really the same thing. The fee calculation only is just going to have a few less tabs of information to put there. So I always recommend just doing the full deal, and you could always stop at the fee calculation as it is anyway, because you can actually go back in here and load deals, as you'll see here right after I click this before we get into the next page. But that is the only difference in that. Fee calculation only will just be a few less tabs of information. And then once you do get the fee calculation, it'll give you the option to convert it to a full deal anyway. So I just always recommend just going the full deal to start anyway. And here's what I was mentioning. You could load previous deals. You can see mine are, same deal number. I just have the same deal number every demonstration I do. But you can go back in here and load deals and actually rerun the fee calculation as well as repopulate the forms, and you won't be charged again. So that is what makes up the transactional fee, is just those two things, right? We charge $35 for the guaranteed fee calculation and then $65 to populate the forms. So essentially, you could actually go back and do that as many times as you would like, and you're only charged for doing it for the first time every deal. So that's really how that works. But we'll obviously be creating a new deal so you can see it from scratch there. And I guess with Utah, I was just going to say, excuse me, before we kind of get into it there, it usually pops up with any state-specific notices, such as vet inspections, safety inspections, things for like California smog inspections, really anything that the state is going to require that the customer has completed. And it's something that you won't be able to do for the customer, right, as a dealership, but something that the customer will just have to make sure that they're doing to title and/or register a vehicle in that state. So it looks like Utah actually didn't have any state-specific requirements. That's the first time I've ever not seen anything pop up. But when we get to the fee calculation here, it also usually shows them again, and in addition, another one or two that are sometimes a little smaller details. So we probably will just see them later on. But that's usually where that pops up the first time. Before you even get into the deal, it'll let you know about state-specific notices that you can reiterate to your customer up front there. But nonetheless, this is where we get into kind of the meat of the information. Owners tab is the first one here. You see their red squares, and once you complete what's necessary for the deal to be pushed through, which is going to be highlighted in red on every tab, then that'll switch over to a green check mark. And you can actually customize this to make whatever you would want appear in red. If in a dealership, if it starts in finance and, the title clerk or whoever handles titling wants the finance guys to, put in certain information, they could actually edit their account to have whatever highlighted in red that they would like to have that, have that information that's necessary to fill out. But it's by default going to have what's required and what's needed to fill out for a deal to be pushed through in that state, regardless. So
Chase,
first thing
is this the dealer's view then as they're going through this process? This is what they're seeing.
Yes, correct. This would be the dealership having the account here and going through once they have a customer, either interested or already looking to purchase a vehicle. And then this is going to go through and really handle all like I said, the titling and registration information for them if they're looking to title and register into another state there.
Got it.
Yeah, so good question there. But yeah, this would be verbatim, what the dealership is going to be looking at, whoever is going to be handling, titling for the dealership there. So the owner information here, I like to always point out, obviously you can use this for individuals in their own cars, but you can utilize this for business to business sales as well. But I'll just go ahead and put in some customer information real quick. And then let me just grab an Abraham. Six 3 5, not 5 3. All right, and then we see once we put all that in, it switches over to the green check mark, so it's all good to go. Next, we have our vehicle information tab here. So you can see just by putting in that VIN number on that first page, it actually populates really everything you're going to need here. So that is a pretty neat tool. I always thought a cool thing there, just having the VIN number, it's going to really populate all the necessary information already. Then you're just going to have to select the vehicle status. And if you select used, it's going to ask you what the previous title state is. This is something that's really not one of the worrisome details. It's something you could always come back to and fill in later on if that's not something that's known, immediately once going through the deal for the first time. But it's just going to ask what the previous title state is every time. So we'll just say Idaho. And then something else I also like putting in, especially with the used vehicle, is just something like an odometer reading. Just to really show that everything you do input on the front end of the system is going to populate on the back end when we get to the forms. So that odometer reading we'll see there later on. And the vehicle tab's good to go. Next is trade-in information. So this is pretty straightforward. Any trade-ins for your customer or per the vehicle. And we actually give you up to 4 options already for vehicle trade-ins. And then we actually, I can't think I've ever seen it before, but we do give you the option to manually input, I believe, up to 4 more. You just have to get in contact with us there and you can input more here. But a pretty straightforward page here, trade-in information, the vehicle information, and the trade-in lien holder information if necessary. Then the purchase information tab. So this is definitely one that's pretty important here. I like to spend just a good minute here on this page. This will be where you put in all the taxable items. So this will be what directly affects the fee calculation. But first we just put in a sales price for the vehicle. Say it's 20,000. Select whether the dealership is shipping the vehicle or not. Is that something that you guys believe your customers would be doing?
There may be some dealers that we work with that would be shipping vehicles, but most of them will probably be delivered on the spot.
Okay. Yeah, I typically hear no's there. I typically hear no there as well. Sorry. But yeah, you just put in sales price, select that, and then you're going to put in the taxable items, as I mentioned, right? And these will directly affect the fee calculation. So it's just important that they're not estimates, kind of the opposite of, what I'll be doing here just to get numbers in here. But, and even lets you know as you go through here, right, that the value must be numeric. So even if there is something that doesn't have a value or there's nothing to input there, you just have to at least put it 0. So that's always something important as well. And then lastly, the NAT processing fee. So this is where you'll charge the customer back directly. I think we were talking about this pretty briefly yesterday, Duncan, or on Monday, sorry. But this is where, our customers really make the money back. So just to go over the pricing in total one more time, I know he was, hinting on the transactional fee earlier. So for this system, to have this on hand, the NAT platform, it's a $135 month-to-month subscription. So no contract with that, right? It is just a monthly subscription, but $135 month to month. And then the transactional fee again is $100 per transaction, which breaks down to once again, the $35 charge for the fee calculation, and then $65 for the DMV forms or the state specific title reg forms. So that's where we get the $100 per transaction. So that's what you're really looking at, $135 month to month, and then $100 per transaction. With the NAT processing fee here, you can throw in any number you would like, and this is a separate line item that we're putting in there for you. That'll appear on the fee calculation as well. And again, it's quite literally what you're just charging the customer back directly for doing this all for them, right? Since you'll be completing all the titling and registration paperwork for them and sending it off to the DMV already completed for them as well. And all they'll have to do is just go pick it up, right? Really just pick up their temp tag or metal plate essentially at that point. So there shouldn't have to be anything for them to go wait in line at the DMV and do themselves. So we always like to think that that's at least myself, if the dealership was doing that for me, especially with an out-of-state deal, as me being an out-of-state customer, I would most likely be pretty okay with paying an extra fee for that. So this is where, again, you can put in any number you would like. We typically see well, I was going to say you could put in anything like the transactional fee, right? Make the $100 back that you're paying per usage or per deal here to use the system. You could charge them back the monthly subscription and make that back on the one deal. But most of our customers, we actually see put anywhere from about 150 to even upwards of about 200 per deal here. So that's what our customers are usually putting in there when they're using this platform. And in that case, by the second or third deal of the month, they've made the money back on the system. And then anything after that is really just profit for them. So again, it's really utilized however you would like. Dealers can essentially will use it differently all the time. Some dealers don't really like charging back. It's whatever you would like to do. You could put in a zero there if you would like as well. I think it kind of only makes sense to charge back at least some amount there, but most of our customers, again, we'll see them put in anywhere from about $150 to $200 per deal there. So I just like to use that as kind of a quick stopping point. If anybody has any questions, I know it's what I like to think is a pretty good detail or pretty important detail is really this whole page in general, but specifically that is where our dealers will make their money back on the system and even then some profit if they do a lot of out-of-state deals.
Yeah. So on those fees, that's the dealership that's paying the $135 month-to-month subscription, $100 per transaction for kind of leveraging the platform. Is that right?
Yes, yeah. So to sign up with us, it's $135 month to month, and then $100 per usage or per transaction there.
Okay. And then you mentioned that you guys have integrations with a lot of the DMSs that are out there. So I imagine with the integrations to the DMS, basically it eliminates the data entry that happens through this process, and it's just carrying over, all of these fields and just kind of passing those across to your system to kind of complete the process in a more automated fashion. Is that right?
Yeah, I mean, definitely, certainly quicker than how I'm going through them right now. Even without the DMS integration, I would say I'm going through a little slower than someone who's trying to just get the deal done would do it. But yeah. But yeah, certainly with the DMS integration, it's mainly the customer information that you'll have in your DMS that'll transfer over. But I have heard certainly of sometimes taxable items that you do input depending on the DMS that you're using. But actually, now that you say that, most of them I've heard this is something that would also transfer over with the taxable items that are in the deal in the DMS as well. The only thing with the taxable items when you're inputting them here is just to make sure that, again, that they are accurate and they're not estimates because they are going to be what's affecting the fee calculation when we get there directly. These numbers would be all the taxable items. And we do have that guarantee on our fee calculation. If I didn't already mention, we do have a guarantee that our fees will be correct for you. And if there was any error in, what we told you to send off there in the check to the DMV, we would actually reimburse the dealership for the amount in error in the deal. So we do have that guarantee for that reason, right? And that's why we do charge $35 for it, because we do have a guarantee on it. And if it was incorrect, we reimburse you for it, whatever that amount is that was in error. And that's just as long as that these taxable items are input correctly. So as long as you put in the taxable items correctly, and we for some reason did have an error, there was some amount that was not right in the fee calculation. In that case is when we would reimburse you there. But it would just be important that to make sure that these values are correct.
Gotcha.
But that is something that I've heard is transferred over from some DMS systems as well.
Okay.
Yeah, very good question though. Does anybody else have any questions before we keep going?
All good.
All right. That's it for the purchase information. Then lien holder information. Again, a pretty straightforward page. You just select your lien holder. I just have Westlake that I always put there, so it populates for me. And then your lien holder address information. So really, this is again pretty straightforward page here. But the only thing I like to say to just make sure of is if you're going to use a lien holder code, is to just check with them to verify. Since this is obviously with out-of-state customers, and they can sometimes lien holders can sometimes vary and just change with their lien holder codes from state to state. So that is the only thing I recommend when I go through here with dealers. Other than that, again, pretty straightforward page there. Then the registration information. So this is really just making sure this insurance information would absolutely be more customer info that would transfer over from a DMS, as I mentioned as well. So that was where another piece of or another part where that DMS integration would come into play, but just going to make sure that this matches up with what we have here for the customer and the registration information. So Millard County. And Abraham. And then it's going to ask if it's in the city limit. This is another page I kind of forgot to mention as I was going through, but obviously I did mention on the first page that whatever you input there, mainly the state that you select, is going to tailor the rest of the deal. Our system is just very state specific, so these pages will look different depending on what state I'm doing the demonstration on. For instance, with the purchase information, I've had some states that I've done a demo on where there's only 2 items here, right? 2 or 3. I actually think I've quite literally seen even just 1 or 2, maybe at least 2 is the lowest I've seen, but it'll just be different amounts just depending on the state, obviously. And then I'll have states where this is a good amount. Utah certainly has a decent amount of taxable items, but states like Colorado, California, Texas, New York, kind of like the most common headache states that I hear from dealerships nationwide, they will have 6, 7, or 8, even not, I think 9 even taxable items, and then before the NAT processing fee, that's even another line down there. So I just like to always point that out, and I feel like I have it, that it is very state specific. For instance, this is another example with the registration information. Sometimes I've only seen them ask for the county and or city, and then this in city limit is something that not every state asks for as well. So just another pointer to kind of hint on that it really is state specific, and depending on what state you select is gonna, like I said, hinder the rest of the deal here and what it looks like or what information it asks for.
On some of this stuff, is your system able to populate that automatically if they're able to input like the full address? Yeah, in case somebody doesn't know if they're in the city limit or not, for example.
I was just gonna say, yeah, with the in-city limit, unfortunately, I've never really seen a case where that is just automatically selected just based off of like their address, here, or actually putting the whole street address, even if you were to do so. It is something that from my understanding, at least, I think that's something that you have to select every time, yes or no here for in-city limit. I mean, at the end of the day, that is something I think the customer more or less should know almost every time.
You'd hope so. You'd hope so for sure.
Yeah, but I mean, there's certainly some times where someone may not know, right? So in that case, it would just be, I would like to think it's just a quick, easy Google search on their address, sort of looking up if it is considered in the city limit or not. And again, I mean, that's really the only 2 options I would have for that, right? If the customer doesn't know, I would simply just be looking it up online, their full address and looking it up if that's in the city limit or not. Typically, I mean, if they're close to the city whatsoever, obviously it's a different mile radius, I suppose, for, every state or city there, but more times than not, unless they're pretty far out from a city, they will be considered in the city limit, I would suppose. But yeah, that's certainly something that I think the customer should know, or if not, then it would just be something that you would look up with their address.
Sure.
And again, insurance information, it's not actually anything that's required, as you can see, but that would be something that pull over from the DMS. And then transfer plate.
Then, so it does look like on the transfer plate then what it would be transferring from like a prior vehicle to the new
a prior vehicle. Yes. I'm realizing that as I was getting here, because typically, like I said, most dealers actually tell me no. So it's actually pretty rare. I've gone through this portion on the registration part with the transfer plate. It's only been a few times before, honestly, but yes, exactly. You were correct with that. It is with a previous.
Yeah, probably more the vanity plates that people would care about if they were going to try to transfer that or something like that. So
exactly.
Gotcha.
Exactly. And then it's just going to ask when you do put in the VIN number for the transfer plate, just the older, the original expiration date, and which obviously put in a random date there, and then the plate type. So typically I would just make it standard. Special personalized or special and personalized would be, obviously for more of a unique vehicle. But yeah, that's really all the details that go into the transfer plate. And again, that kind of just ties into, there will be a section of it on the transfer plate in the forms there with the registration side of things. But for the most part, it's really for just the sake of, fees there for the transfer plate. And then after that, this is really the last step here altogether before we get into the main 2 things that we're doing. Again, the fee calculation and the forms, they're back to back. So the DMV contact information, I always think this is a pretty cool part of the system as well. Basically, just by having all the address information in there already, you just hit use DMV location, and it's going to give you, actually here it still is going to have a couple different locations, I guess, because these are both in that county, but it's going to give you the closest DMV location to your customer there, right? By just simply clicking use DMV location. More times than not, I actually see it just populate it right there. But this time it's going to give you two options just because these are obviously both pretty close by or just the two main DMVs used in that county. So use DMV location, or as I think I did mention to Duncan on Monday, we do give you the option to use a private tag agency, as we do partner with them in every state. Really the only purpose of that, or the main usage of that, would just be to have a more efficient timeline, right? They're a little quicker than the DMVs typically. Obviously with the DMV, it just depends on the state that you're dealing with. As I'm sure you guys know, some of them are a little quicker than others with processing paperwork, but for the most part, or not for the most part, every time actually, the private tag agency is always going to be quicker. We like to say with the DMVs that our average timeline for getting paperwork submitted and processed by the DMV is anywhere from about a week and a half to 2 weeks. Typically don't see any longer than 2 weeks for that to happen, because again, this is going straight from the dealership's desk, and they can print off the forms at the end and then ship it right off. So it's not something that they have to send off to us as a central processor first or anything like that. So we typically see a timeline of about a week and a half to 2 weeks for the paperwork to be not just submitted, but processed by the DMV. And then using a private tag agency, it's actually just a consistent timeline we've always seen of 3 to 5 business days. And that's why they have, an additional fee as well if you're going to use a private tag agency on top of that. And that's just something that, you would reiterate up to your customer. And if it's something, you and the customer want to do, if it's something you guys want to get completed quicker, you would obviously utilize that. Or, like I mentioned, just the good old DMV. But that's really all there is to that. And then that's the last step. So that's kind of the end of the meat of it right there. This is where we get the fee calculation. You can see the button is in blue. So that's just signifying that that's what we'll be charged, the $35 to get the guaranteed fee calculation. So just want to quickly use that as another stopping point, see if anybody has any questions before we kind of get to the ending portions of it here.
Jay, I think you're on mute.
Thanks, Duncan. So on the lien holder information, going back there, so where we would be a lien holder, do they have the ability to create lien holders in the system where they can just have like drop downs to basically pre-populate the information regarding the address and things like that?
I do believe there's an option to create lien holders. I know you can certainly add lien holder there. Or actually, that's just quite literally adding another lien holder option. I'm sorry, but there is certainly, because usually there is a drop down, or you start looking up a lien holder and it will populate for you. You were mentioning that because a lot of your customers or dealers would use you guys as a lien holder. Is that why?
Yeah, so we would be a lien holder on the deals that are coming to us. So if we're wanting the dealer to use this service to make sure that we're getting the titles timely and things like that, the information is correct. Just simplify the process for them, make sure that the lien holder information is input correctly, right? Because I've seen plenty of title registrations with, say, Arvid as a lien holder when the company was a Revo. There was another company that was Avid, things like that, where it's like, okay, that's clearly not correct information, right? So then we have to go update those documents and forms at that point. So just to kind of expedite that process, make sure it's all input correctly, they've got the correct address, there aren't any typos or anything like that that can create issues down the road, right?
Yeah, no, you can certainly do that. Yeah, absolutely. And that actually brings up another point with just the lien holder and, this being a finance deal in general. Kind of one last detail I forgot to mention before we just get into looking at the fee calculation and then the forms. One other thing we'll do for you is help perfect the lien. So, essentially as soon as the paperwork is submitted and then processed by the DMV or private tag agency, that lien should be perfected immediately as soon as it's, processed. So it kind of takes away from, dealers ever getting contacted by any other lien holders or banks. But as I mean, you guys just mentioned, obviously it'd be, you guys you'd be putting in there as the lien holder, but that is something that the system will do for you as well. We have everything filled out correctly. That's the whole point of it, right? Getting it done right the first time in an efficient manner. So That way the lien is perfected as soon as the forms are processed there.
Okay, so typically what I've seen in the process on our side is like we review the title before kind of perfecting the lien. So the DMV will either send us a copy depending on e-title, things like that, right? And then we basically review the information, make sure that it's all correct before perfecting it. We submit
Okay.
for edits. If not, would your service kind of be doing that where if everything is correct kind of a thing, that it would just automatically perfect it, or is it different?
Yeah.
Am I misunderstanding that?
No, yeah, 100%. Essentially, that's what I'm saying, right? I guess if you guys would still want to be, doing that part of it, is if that's what you're used to doing, or that's where you guys really come into play, is doing that and making sure checking the title before the lien's perfected. You could certainly still do that, but that is essentially what our system will be doing for you, right? The lien should be perfected immediately upon, the forms being submitted and processed to either whatever you select, the DMV or the tag agency there. Yeah, good question though. But yeah, we certainly that's absolutely something that another thing that I've heard of some other titling providers, specifically with out of state there. Just have heard of when I talk to dealers sometimes that the current system they're using or whatever doesn't do that for them. So that's always a detail I like to mention. So I almost did forget about that. But yeah, we certainly will perfect liens for you.
Okay. Is that something that's like an additional charge, or is that something because the dealer's already paying for it, it's just taken care of?
No, that's something that we're just taking care of. Yeah, it's in a sense you could say goes into the price of the product in itself already. It's something that the system will just do for you.
Okay.
All right. Well, as I mentioned, that's really the end of the meat of it there. So like I said, the blue button here lets you know that you're being charged for it. So this is where we're charged that initial $35 for the fee calculation. So go ahead and click on that, and then we'll get our line by line breakdown of our fee calc. All right, and then we'll go through it here, and as I mentioned, we'll have our line by line breakdown. First thing or the two main things to really pay attention to, most important things here, are the total taxable amount to the state. So the state of Utah taxable amount, again, I put in 20,000 as the sales price of the vehicle. And then the total amount to collect from your customer, which would be down here. One thing I forgot to mention, actually, I'm just realizing now in the beginning of the deal, you'll see Florida in here. So essentially our practitioner, our demo practitioner is located in Florida, hypothetically, for whatever reason that when we go through demonstrations, it essentially has our title tech dealership hypothetically located in Florida. So I do apologize. I always remember to mention that in the beginning. I think I just forgot because I know I had you guys waiting, but that's why you'll see Florida. So just to avoid any confusion, this is essentially a Florida to Utah deal if the dealership was located in Florida. But again, the two really bigger things to pay attention to are the total taxable amount to the state, and then again, the total amount to collect from your customer here. And you can see the NAT processing fee, $200 we put in there. So that's obviously incorporated into that. But as we go through here, this is the titling and registration fees that we've guaranteed to be correct here. And it is updated. This portion of our system, with taxes and fees is something that we make sure is updated on a daily basis. Otherwise, people would really just have to be going online and looking up these items, but that's something that, may not be updated when you look it up online every day, or is just, takes a little time consuming to find. So that's essentially what we're doing for you, is just giving it to you, guaranteed to be correct. And then, obviously with just a click of that button, it's just a matter of a few seconds, you'll get the line by line breakdown. So I'm not sure if you guys are already familiar with Utah a little bit, maybe you recognize, some of these fees or these numbers even as well. Something that looks
so
like
so this would be why you're asking for like the trade-in information, right? Because that would actually reduce the total, like the taxable amount on the sale, on the sale and
correct.
things like that. So
Yep.
Got it. Because you're calculating not just like the DMV fees for the registration, but also the entire, the sales tax and everything else that's due on it as part of that registration process.
Hmm. Exactly. Exactly. So I'm really glad you saw that, because that's, I mean, you're spot on with that. That's exactly why it does ask. And that's why I say it's really just for the sake of fees, when I first brought it up. Um, Additional fees, like I mentioned, we put in a separate line item. Obviously, you already saw it down here with as part of the total amount to collect from the customer, but just kind of reiterates that it's something we input for you as a separate line item there again. Utah motor vehicle taxes, so state sales tax, local tax, and then reciprocity. Not sure if you guys are familiar with reciprocity. Not every state does have it. So reciprocity is, if a state does have it, it's essentially just the difference in the sales taxes with the two states, between the two states involved. And you can see here, there actually isn't any difference there. But again, not every state, and most states actually, from what I understand, don't have it. But reciprocity, again, is something that I had to learn actually myself when I started selling title tech here. But it's just quite literally the difference in the sales taxes between the two states involved in the deal.
Yeah, got it. Yeah, I know in Utah, if you're selling to an out-of-state customer, they're going to be paying sales taxes in the state where they reside. You're basically given an exemption in Utah, right? And so you just pay wherever you reside.
Mhm.
So yeah, I imagine each state probably handles that a little differently.
Exactly. Yep. And then facts and T summary. So, or fee and tax summary. Tax amount due to Florida. Again, hypothetically, we started in Florida with this deal. So Florida to Utah. Tax title and reg fees due to Utah, which essentially is just the, or I'm sorry, I was going to say that's the total of those numbers, but that's actually not true. But yeah, this is obviously the total amount to collect that you're going to be collecting from your customer, right? For your dealership. And then here we go, as I mentioned, the state-specific notices. So it actually didn't have any of these in the beginning. Typically, it does show them, as I mentioned, right after that introduction page, before you actually get into kind of the meat of the deal there. It typically will pull up these state-specific notices right here at the beginning of the deal as well. As the second time. This would typically be the second time they show you. But I think it's just because these are pretty generic ones with just a VIN and safety inspection, and then they let you know about a little tax credit notice. So I think it's nothing really too unique to the state of Utah, where you won't see this basically in almost every state, right? So I think it's only.
I guess this would probably be a little bit different based on counties too, right? So for example, in Utah, there's like 3 counties that require smog inspection, right? But the rest of the state only requires safety. So that would probably be, Abraham, Utah's way out in the middle of nowhere. So that would
Exactly.
kind of make sense, I guess. They're not going to require the smog, but then if it's going to be titled and registered in Salt Lake City, they're going to require the smog inspection, and that would be here too.
Right, exactly. And I actually didn't even realize that different counties in Utah would have different requirements. So that is 100% accurate, right? It is down to the county level with our system when it comes to notices like that. Even the taxes and fees, because for states like, I'm not sure if you guys are maybe a little familiar with Colorado, but those different counties have about different sales tax or different taxes and fees in almost every county there, right, in Colorado. So that's why a lot of dealers I work with like to see that state as a demo as well.
Yeah, I mean that's probably why it's asked in the city limits or not. There's the municipal sales taxes often as well.
Right.
Makes sense.
Yep, exactly. So that's what those are. Again, typically it will show you in the beginning as well, but since these are just pretty generic ones, it just saved them, for the to populate on this page, which they always will, but usually they'll let you know about any kind of unique ones to reiterate up to your customer at the beginning of the deal as well. Great questions there, though. Right. And then next, like I mentioned, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And just from there, it looks like you just print registration forms. Then the dealer is responsible for actually then mailing this to the DMV. There's no integration to the DMVs to like automatically do it. It's just it prints them out, takes care of making sure everything's calculated correctly, the forms are filled in correctly, and then they print them out and ship them off.
Exactly. Unfortunately, not every state, is required to do their titling and registration electronically. So there's not really a setup like that to, be able to electronically connect to or submit it off to every DMV in the country. So that's the only thing you'll really have to do. But yeah, we'll just click print registration forms. And again, it's another blue button. That's where we're charged the $65, to gather these forms. And I always think it's pretty cool. Just a matter of a few seconds here, we'll have all of our state specific forms here with the addition of some that we input for you. But I was going to go through them slowly. I was just wanting to show you how many there were. But go ahead. I'm sorry.
Sure. So for states that do have e-titling, are you able to basically submit it straight from inside the system?
No, with our system here, it's always going to operate as this way. Populating as the PDF file. You can print off the PDF, and then you can see once we get down here, there's payment information, mailing instructions. So we give you the mailing address, obviously, of the DMV or a private tag agency, whatever you're using. There's the license plate destination form, and then we also will give you the shipping options as well. It should show the shipping options in there. But yeah, essentially just giving you everything doing everything except for electronically shipping it off. So that's the only thing you would have to do there. But just going through these real quick, I know I've, taken up a lot of your guys' time, so I do apologize, and I do really appreciate you guys staying on here. But just wanted to kind of highlight some things here with the forms. This title application checklist that we input here for you is also a really good tool. I like it a lot because it's something that's updated, again, I believe on a daily basis. But essentially everything in red here, meaning just this line obviously here, but anything in red on this page is going to be what the DMVs in that state, so in this case, Utah, are reporting are the most common issues that they're coming across when regards to customers and their the paperwork that they're submitting to them. So that's always going to be something that is kind of good to look at, and you can actually utilize this as an actual checklist. So you can go through and check everything off there. But that's just really what I like the most about this page, and obviously is the thing that pops out the most, right? Is whatever's in red is going to be the most common issues that those DMVs are reporting. Is what they're experiencing with their customers or people submitting paperwork to them. The next one here is another one we input here for you, the payment information. So there's just two boxes. Obviously, the top one is if you're going to be using a private tag agency, where you make the check out to the bottom one for the DMV there. And as I mentioned, the mailing instructions. And then we actually have, the mailing instructions for the DMV, and then there actually is a spot here to put contact information, just for, ideally I would say the owner, or really just a contact at the dealership for the DMV to have in case that they did need to get in contact with you in regards to any of your paperwork or any information. Now, obviously, that's what we're trying to avoid here, right? Everything should be submitted off correctly and filled out correctly the first time, but it is just for safety or precaution there. If they do need to get in contact with you in regards to your paperwork at all, you just put a contact for the dealership here. And then here we have our first state-specific form, I like to say, even though this is actually just from the state DMV, but limited power of attorney form. License plate destination form. So as I mentioned, right, you can select whether you'd like the license plate to go to directly to the owner or to your dealership first. And another page that we input here for you, just an NAT or NAT deal summary. As you can see, it's really just a one-page condensed view of all the information. So if that's a little easier on the eye, we do ask you to submit this along with the rest of the paperwork. But it is just a one-page condensed view of really all the information. So some people kind of like viewing it that way as well, or even a little more. And then here's where you'll see the odometer reading that I input on the first page. So just showing everything that you do input in the front end of the system is going to populate on the back end with the forms here.
And so some of these forms then will require some additional input, things like that from the dealership at this point, it looks like. Is that right?
I'm sorry, you cut out a little bit in the beginning there. You said some of these are what?
So some of these fields, or some of these forms would require some additional inputs from the dealership. So just at this stage, is that right?
Yeah, you just are implying just putting in information here.
So like that one there where it's basically blank, like license plate destination form. So they would fill, this is where, they'd fill this in at this point in the process.
Yes, correct. But also one thing though I would like to mention is when it comes to, well, I guess yeah, prior to that there really wasn't much else to fill out there. But yeah, anything that's like a contact, you have to put someone there. For this page, for this limited power of attorney form, um, I mean essentially it is actually information you have to fill out as well. Although it's pretty brief. I mean, once you kind of go through it. But I was going to say when it comes to things like the customer information, so on pages like this, where there's more customer information, especially with that DMS integration in play, it actually would autofill some more spots for you. So mine definitely seems a little more blank than what it typically would look like. But yes, ultimately, there's certainly information every time when you get to the forms here that the dealer would have to input. That's definitely true. And we got a title app for Utah here. And you can see the highlighted yellow boxes here, or just the highlighted sections. That's showing that that's where a wet signature is required for the customer. So that's another thing we'll do for you. Anywhere where there's a wet signature required by the state in any of the forms, we'll let you know about that. And obviously you can't miss it, right? So that's just where you know that you need a wet signature from the customer. Otherwise, there's always options to sign it electronically here, but we'll let you know, obviously, if it's something that you need to have them sign after you print it out. Domino disclosure statement here, another signature here. That's going to be a wet signature required. Certificate of inspection for Utah. For instance, something like this, right? The name of your customer and address. I didn't put in a complete street address. And obviously I just don't have the DMS integration in general. So things like that is where I believe that information should just pull right over.
Okay.
And yeah, it looks like that is the last form here. So it's really just these last few that are really the state specific ones. But yeah, that's really the gist of it there, especially when it comes to the forms here. I mean, the main things we're going to be doing is, we guarantee everything that's necessary for the state. I haven't ever heard of really any customers ever let us know that they had some missing paperwork when they did submit off to the DMV. So everything's always going to be in here that you need. We simply hit print registration forms and everything is in here that you'll need to send off, let you know about, hey, pay close attention to, dealing with this state. This is what the DMVs are saying are the most common issue that they're experiencing, right? And then obviously just giving you, like I mentioned, the address, shipping options, and like I said, letting you know where there's any wet signatures required for the customer. So yeah, just based off of that, I mean, specifically to the ending portion here, with the forms, I always like asking, what's your initial reaction or, initial feedback on the all the forms here at the end.
It makes it a lot easier to make sure that the dealerships have everything they need in line, right? They've got it all to send in, so that's great. Um, do you have a list you can share of all of the DMSs that you're integrated with?
Yeah, I could certainly do that. I was gonna say excuse me, I'll and I can actually do is go ahead and or I'll end the recording in a second here, and then I can send the recording to you, Duncan, and I'll kind of go through or just give a brief overview of the system again, and put pricing there, and I can certainly include a list of all the DMS systems we integrate with there. It is I mean, I like to say a majority of just the major ones. So, DealerTrack, CDK, Wayne Reeves, and Frazier, I guess are kind of smaller ones, but they're utilized in a lot in the states that we're partnered with in Georgia and Florida specifically. But yeah, DealerTrack, um, CDK, Reynolds and Reynolds, really just a lot of the major ones that that I typically hear. We integrate with majority of them, but yeah, I'll certainly get a list of all of them and include that in the email, the recap email there.
Great.
Yeah. Was there any other questions anyone had? And that's kind of goes for, any part of the system whatsoever in any portion of the deal.
It's pretty slick.
Pretty slick. I like I like to hear that.
More for me.
Cool. Yeah, awesome. I mean, and I'm sure you guys are obviously, I think you've mentioned to me on Monday, Duncan, looking into several options here. This obviously would just be for out-of-state customers. I'm curious, are you guys kind of looking for something that would be able to handle both in and out-of-state titling kind of simultaneously, or just with one company, or is that something that you guys are almost kind of looking into separately, or it's just not that big of a deal if it is separate companies there?
I mean, Jay, go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, I think what we're looking for, and Duncan, I believe I've understood this correctly, right? But what we're looking for is a platform that can kind of help dealers get their titles and titling done correctly. Working with different dealerships, especially independents, often they getting titles and getting correct titles and getting them timely is a big issue for us. And so having, basically what we're looking to do is require that, some of the smaller independents in particular leverage a title service. And so want to understand how the title services work, which one we basically want to say, hey, we need you guys to use these guys because they're going to make sure you get your titles done correctly, right? So
Right.
it would be, probably most of the business would be, within the state, given that most of those dealerships are probably working with, with customers in the state. But of course, even the larger dealer groups and things like that have a lot of issues with the out-of-state titles. So it may be something that if we're going to have somebody that's registering for a customer that is out of state, that we potentially require that they leverage a service regardless of kind of the size of the dealership or something like that, right? So do you offer within state services as well, or is it strictly like out-of-state business?
So this is just what we're most well known for, is our out-of-state platform here. Again, NAT, National Auto Titling. We do have an in-state system. We just have a what we call ETR for Georgia, as well as Florida. I kind of briefly mentioned that just a minute ago, but yeah, if I hadn't already said it before, if we spoke on when we spoke on Monday, Duncan, that's what I do believe I sent you an email with kind of going over the Georgia and Florida systems. Yeah, just briefly there. So. Yeah, we certainly have in-state systems for really, and I want to say those are actually just the only states that require legally that their independent dealers do their in-state titling electronically. I do know we also are partnered with, I just don't deal with, we have certain field reps that kind of handle these states specifically, but I know we also have an in-state system for Virginia, as well as South Carolina, and I do want to say, I believe Pennsylvania. I think so, but I deal with specifically. We certainly have one for Georgia and Florida, and I know there's kind of in the works of some other states that are slowly but surely like kind of trickling along, doing the same thing. Requiring their dealers to do their in-state titling electronically. But yeah, as of now, it's really just those 4 or 5 states that we would offer in-state titling for. Otherwise, it's just really the out-of-state customers when it comes to the rest of the country that we'll be able to help the dealerships with.
Good deal.
Yeah, and again, that's basically the end of it. I know that took quite a while, and I do apologize again, guys, for hopping on a little late, but I really do appreciate you guys taking the time to go through here with me today. I just always like to ask. I mean, obviously, you guys are looking into several options, but I mean, how realistically would you guys consider yourselves moving forward with this system? Or I guess also just, was there any hesitations just right off the bat after going through it?
I mean, I think
general looks.
like I like the idea of it. And I mean, I think it would really help our independents kind of, again, get titles. The fact that it can protect the titles, I think it saves us a lot of headache.
Mm-hmm.
The one limitation that I think it has is just like, again, on our end, like this is kind of more of a dealer facing one. We'd like something as well to interface with our side and, so that we can double check titles, double check, odometer readings, stuff like that. So I mean, I definitely think there's space for it, but we do have quite a few more companies that are being interviewed this week, right?
Yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I appreciate the feedback there, and I like to hear that you guys do see the value in it. So that's perfect. I will go ahead and I'll stop sharing my screen, and then I'll end that recording here for you guys now.